The verse that I wanted to share from was from the 2 Corinthians 9:8 verse. It's become one of my favorite verses since we memorized it. I reference it probably at least once a week. I reference it. I don't know about you. God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. Are you lacking in anything? God promises that we will have an abundance for every single good deed. I don't think that any one of us, I was thinking about it, I don't know that any one of us can say honestly, I have felt no lack in any circumstance. Take this past week, forget the rest of our lives, just this past week. I felt no lack in any circumstance. I had perfectly everything I needed and was able to perfectly manifest the perfect nature of Jesus Christ. Can anybody say that? I'm not there yet. And yet that's the promise, right? That's not only the call of this verse, it's also the promise. The promise is God is able to make all grace abound to us so that it always, and what does he mean by always? In every circumstance, you might have an abundance for every good deed. For every good deed, always. And I think about, this is the life of Jesus Christ. What Paul is promising is that the life of Jesus Christ might be manifested in us at all times. He exemplified the abundance for every good deed, right? That phrase, abundance for every good deed. Who had an abundance for every good deed? Jesus Christ. What this says to me is that the life of Jesus Christ can be overflowing in my life in every single circumstance. And yet for me, if I examine my life, I can't say that the life of Christ is always overflowing in every single circumstance. We aren't there yet, but I see that that's the promise. And I was thinking about, what are the circumstances which I see that lacking? Like, what are the circumstances where I'm not experiencing or exhibiting an abundance or an overflow for every good deed? And I was thinking, in those circumstances, those are the times that I need to rush to the God of all grace. I need to rush to the God of all grace in the circumstances where I'm not seeing the life of Christ being manifested in me. I'm often guilty of thinking, if only kinds of statements. I'd be more wholehearted if only this wasn't true. I'd give God more if only, the baby wasn't crying right now. If only the girls would go to bed or stay in bed. Or, there can be all sorts of circumstances I can blame for my lack of wholeheartedness. But when I think like this, what I'm saying is that I think there are some circumstances in which I can't fully manifest the life of Jesus Christ. And that's contrary to what the promise is here. And I don't want to be the kind of person who blames any circumstance for the lack of the life of Jesus Christ being manifested in me. I've become convinced that there's no circumstance that can keep me from giving God everything. There's no circumstance that should be able to keep me from overflowing. And I've been thinking the place that I have the opportunity to honor God the very most is in depending on him in the circumstance in which he's placed me. I think it's easy to, in my mind, want to choose a circumstance that can honor. Simple example. I'm in the shower yesterday. I'm thinking in my head, hey, I've got like 2 hours probably. All the kids are down. I'm going to read my Bible. That's actually what I was thinking. I wasn't planning on saying this. This is a true story. Yesterday, I'm thinking, oh man, that's what's going to honor God. That's how I can be wholehearted. I'm going to get out of the shower and I'm going to sit down and read because all the kids are down. It's going to be all good, right? And you know what I heard when I turned the water off? A baby crying. And my first thought was, can't honor God now. I got to go deal with the baby, right? And that's such a deception. The verse says he's able to make all grace so that in all circumstances, so that in everything I might have an abundance. And the place that we choose to honor God is like the temperature needs to be perfect. The tea should be the perfect temperature. There should be no noise, right? That's the place we feel comfortable and confident I can honor God. But that's not the place that God has chosen to place us in a lot of times. And the thing that, as I sat down with the baby to feed him, when I thought I wanted to be reading the Bible, and I thought that's the moment I can honor God, what the Lord comforted me with is, you honor me most by depending on me in the circumstance I've actually placed you in. You don't honor me most by the circumstance that you've envisioned in your mind. It's kind of the perfect set of circumstances for you to honor me. You humble yourself under my mighty hand, and I'm honored. When you depend on me in doing the thing that you aren't really inclined to do right now, and not really the thing that you would predetermine would honor me most, but the thing that I've obviously called you to. And that comforted me. In that moment, I thought, okay, I can honor God here. May not be exactly how, the perfect kind of visualization I had 10 minutes ago, but I can still honor God here. And that comforted me. And the circumstance keeping me from being, quote unquote, I say, keeping me from being wholehearted is the place that I need to invite the God of grace into. I need to invite the God of all grace into that circumstance and say, Lord, the life of Jesus has to be manifested in me here. It's not the circumstance that's where the ideal conditions are that I need the God of all grace. I need the God of all grace in the circumstance that I didn't plan, that I didn't ask for, that I didn't really want, and that I think is somehow keeping me from manifesting the life of Jesus. That's when I need the God of all grace. I had this experience another time recently. A couple weeks ago, Michelle and I had a date night. We had a babysitter come. We don't get out of the house a lot. We thought, okay, we're going to go on a date. We get in the car. I don't know if you've had this experience. We had two different ideas of what ideal date night would be, which was only really kind of came to light once we're in the car. And we said, hey, what do you want to do? And she said thing Y, and I said thing X, and we started going to thing Y, obviously. And I'm kidding. But we're driving there, and I'm thinking, oh man, I really wanted to do thing X. I'm kind of like, we get out of the car, we're in place Y, and I was tempted to kind of pout a little bit in my spirit, like, I really wish I could be doing, we don't get out of the house a lot without kids. I kind of wish I was doing thing X. And then I remembered that line from the song, which reminds me of this verse. It says, He giveth more grace when the burden grows greater. He sendeth more strength when the labor sinks. And this is a silly example, right? Is it really a burden to not be doing what I want to do on a date night? I don't have any children with me. That's great. That's already a blessing, right? But that line came to my mind. So it's good. It's good. I'm not saying, like, really, Jeremy, you need more grace right now. In a sense, yeah, if I'm pouting and if I'm complaining, absolutely. And in my heart, in that moment, I thought, when I thought of that line, He giveth more grace when the burden grows greater, I thought, this moment, the moment when I thought I wasn't going to have a burden, and now there's a burden being placed upon me in a sense, or I'm being called to die to my own desire and submit and die to myself. I saw it as an opportunity to receive more grace from God. And I said, wow, you give more grace if the burden grows greater. If the burden's greater, I have an opportunity to receive grace in some way which I haven't before. And that was a thought. And I actually remember exactly what I was looking at in this store at that moment. I thought, I can have more grace right now. And I thought, at the end of the night, rather than being worse off for having had a bad attitude or pouting or complaining or grumbling in my spirit, I have the opportunity to be better off because I'm counting on God to give me more grace in the moment that I'm tempted to indulge or be frustrated. And I found it to be true. My honest testimony is at the end of the night, Michelle said, hey, thanks for doing that. She didn't know any of this. I hope she didn't know any of this was kind of going on in my own mind and heart. I don't think she did. So I told her this morning. She was like, really? You were thinking that? So that's a good sign. But the problem is it's in my heart, right? It's not, do I show someone else? It's what's in here. But my honest prayer, my honest testimony is at the end of that night, she said, hey, thanks. And I didn't have this meek kind of martyrs. Oh yeah, no problem. My honest response was, that was fun. That was great. And when I said that, at the end of the night, when I said that was fun, I realized, wow, God actually gave me so much grace that I enjoyed the thing that I didn't really want to do at the beginning of the night. And I'm not feeling like a martyr saying it. I actually did enjoy it. And He completely changed my attitude. And it's a simple example, but that's where we need to invite the God of all grace, who's able to make all grace abound to us, into the circumstance where we think, surely I'm going to be kept from manifesting the life of Christ in this circumstance. I almost hesitate to share these examples because they're so petty, and yet I know it's the petty things that keep us from the fullness of the grace that's been offered to us. It's these petty things, it's the little mosquito bites, as I think Bobby mentioned before, that keep us from entering in fully and experiencing God's overflowing, abounding grace all the time. And I want it all the time because that's the promise of this verse. And what I mean when I say we need to respond to the God of all grace is having a willing and willful acknowledgement of God's sovereignty. That's what I think I did in that moment. It wasn't when I was standing there and saying, when I remembered that song, He giveth more grace when the burden grows greater, I wasn't saying a token prayer. I think sometimes in a tough spot, I can be like, God help me, but I don't really mean it. I'm not even engaged and dependent. It's almost just like a reflex. And I don't think, God is gracious, and maybe He does respond to reflexive prayers. But what I'm seeing here is I actually said it cost me something to think of that song and to say, no, I'm going to believe it. It caused pain on my part in dying a little bit to my own desire. Because at that time, we could still legitimately go do thing X, the thing I wanted to do. And if I pushed, we probably could have done it, right? But I decided, no, I want to die because I want to receive more grace. And my point is, that's what it means to invite the God of all grace in. It requires a willful determination to look and say, God, I acknowledge your sovereignty in allowing all circumstances in my life, and I choose to humble myself under your mighty hand. I choose to choose your path and humble myself. And his sovereignty often places us in circumstances that are not to our liking, but that are certainly according to his plan for our training. And that's what I was thinking is, it may not be to my liking, but it is according to God's plan for my training. And I want to submit to his training. I don't have to get my way all the time. I need him to have his way in me. And that requires that I die. And I want to be a younger brother of Jesus. If Jesus was able to exemplify this abundance for every good deed, I want to have that same overflow in the circumstances that God placed me in, not just in the circumstances that I premeditate in my mind, are the circumstances that I can please God in. So I'm thankful for that.